My name is Patrick Karekezi, and today I bring to you Ousman Touray. Ousman Touray is a renowned Pan-Africanist, recently awarded, and what should I add? There is a lot. Ousman is the co-founder and chairperson of Young Ancestors Foundation. I shouldn't forget that. Ousman, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Patrick, for having me. I think the last time we spoke was in Kigali.
It must have been Kigali, and right now we're in the game, we are having a conversation once again. And Ousman, I want to quote you. I remember sometime in 2019, was it 2019, 2020 or so, where you came up and you're saying, my name is Ousman Touray, I cannot go study in the UK, no study in Canada, no study in the US. I mean, that was a time when you were given these incredible scholarships, right? You chose to stick around.
Yes.
How is it going?
Thank you so much, Patrick. It has been an incredible journey as a young individual and growing up in Africa. Beyond the self-development and my academic journey, I have networked with Africans beyond the city of Kigali and Rwanda, but extensively traveled to other African countries and seen the incredible work that young Africans are championing. And this makes me really optimistic. And I would have chosen that same decision over and over again.
If you got a chance right now, you choose the same decision.
I will do it again and again. That's just optimistic.
I love that.
And passionate I am for Africa and its development.
I'll be honest, Ousman, what inspires me most is how you make a decision and stick to it, you know. Any other African, I'm not saying about any other African, I mean, so many young people out here, we're having this discussion with friends, we're like, what if tomorrow these Western countries open their borders, normal visas, what would happen? I remember this friend who stood up and said that if they opened, even his own president would leave the country. And that cracked me up, right? And what inspires me is the consistency, your ability to stick around, stick with the same narrative, and still pursue a greater cause for Africa. Man, inspiring.
I mean, thank you so much. You know, these are just beyond calculations. I mean, this is passion, and I am passionate about Africa beyond an academic journey. I want to live in Africa. I want to explore the opportunities in Africa, and I want to be among those individuals that will champion Africa's development in one way or the other. So looking at myself as a part of the solution is really what triggers my mindset towards Africa and Africa's development. And I believe that my tool to make this work is that I need to explore the African continent. I need to be in touch with the people who are developing the incredible stories for Africa's future, which is the youth.
Exactly.
And my biggest platform is Africa. So in as much as I can travel across Africa, in as much as I can learn across African societies, I will continue to do that.
And you know, when you say your biggest platform is Africa, we should add in the narrative, Africa is our birthright. I mean, it should be here to stay, to grow, to learn, to love, to thrive, and leave legacies. And Ousman, you speak of something that you want to be part of. You know, you're already part of the problem. And so many times in Africa, we've seen problems start in Africa, but the solutions at the end of the day, they are coming from elsewhere.
I mean, this has been, our biggest failures from our development policies, from our economic, models and everything. Because the problems are within Africa. So how do you import its solutions? It doesn't work like that. Development comes from the grassroots initiatives, championed by individuals. Of course, you need a visionary leader who inspires people on a daily basis to wanting to make impact. But what the people do on their daily basis with a common goal of achieving a national development, a continental development, is what Africa needs. And that thing cannot be imported. In as much as we are importing food, water, everything in the continent, but the genuine development that will change the status quo for Africa cannot be imported. It must emerge from within Africa, championed by Africans, reflecting the African reality, and through that, Africa will be in its developing lane.
Great, but Ousman, you see a lot of things are changing in Africa. With the most recent being the Russia-Ukraine kind of issue out here. And these days when you speak about the economy in Africa, I'm going to say this, but like we've always cried for an economy that enables us to thrive, not just a growing economy. And if you remember the Africa Rising narratives and the stories being told about us as a fast-moving continent, much as you're moving at a rate way slower than the other continents, you know, I still feel there is a lot that needs to be done. Inflation is too much in Africa. Ousman, what's going on?
I mean, you see, one of the issues that we have is that the economy that we're talking about here in Africa and the African economy is really not in the hands of Africans. So what really happened is that corporate responsibilities, that social responsibilities that the private sector is supposed to champion, you know, when it comes to situations like this, they do not do, because in as much as things are happening, they still want to maximize profit. And mind you, the mining we are talking about, the resources we are talking about, Africa's agricultural sector is even championed by private individuals, some of whom are not Africans. In fact, majority of whom. As a result of this, food self-sufficiency, I mean, many countries have failed to attain it. But not only that, now you look at the economy at a bigger scale. An economy that is owned by outsiders who wants to maximize profit, really pay attention to some of these crises. They just want to make profit. And who profits from these wars? Of course, the people in charge. And these things makes it really difficult for African countries today to strive. In as much as we single-handedly point few countries and say, these are countries with the fastest growing economy. Okay, what level, what percentage is their economy in the bigger global economy? What weight do they do? You look at it, international politics, international economy, African states are always, you know, at the lowest level. Because these things don't work. What we need to be doing now is going back to the roots, developing initiative, empowering the Africans within the African continent. Give them chance. Let the governments be the enablers, building the platforms that will make the brilliant initiatives that young Africans are developing across the continent to be able to realize it in their own soil, because that's beyond just an opportunity that they're giving them, but it restores pride, it restores dignity, because your home is giving you a space to be you, and that is what development is all about.
I like that. But you know, Ousman, as well, we cannot forget that issues of debt in Africa, right? I think I've taken note of these. At some point we're behind, and I remember in one of your speeches you said that I think Ghana was lending to China at some point, something like, right? Supporting China, and right now we are begging. I mean, Africa is begging every other day to have a lot of potential within. And we noticed that when the Europeans came in, they had a narrative. I think we had Arabs before the Europeans came in. Europeans were talking like, hey, the Arabs exploited you, we're now here to support you, and then they did the colonization, and then we had other groups come in and also try to convince us with their different narratives. So, in other words, they came and blackmailed the previous folks that came in. And today as we speak, much as not widely talked about, the BRICS, I mean, speaking of Brazil, China, India, I mean, all those folks are coming in and they're also studying. We have this project by the Chinese, the Belt and Road Initiative. These are different projects that are targeting Africa, trying to develop us. Do you think this is what we need right now?
I mean, you see, the biggest thing and failures that Africa today is going on is to believe that our development can really be triggered by outsiders. It has never worked anywhere. It has always been championed by people to whom it is meant for.
What happened in China?
And now, with the case of China, for instance, I mean, we've seen, in as much as we are not saying Africa should use the same strategy, but it has worked for China. Before joining the World Trade Organization, they have somehow disconnected themselves from the global economy, set up things. It was a huge price that Chinese have to pay, but today they've proven to the world that being who you are really works. The case of the next, the newly industrialized states or nations like Vietnam, the case of Japan, South Korea we are talking about. These were countries in wars, countries that were unstable, faced with famine, when Africans were championing slogans and huge discussions of states' independence. These countries were bleeding. And today, they can buy Africa within a blink of an eye.
It's upside, right?
I mean, it is sad. And these are problems that we must diagnose. And I think going back to the roots will have to mean Africa not just championing its development, but to be deliberate about it. You see, so many societies came into Africa, grab whatever they need in order to register their own development. We've talked about this over and over. In the case of the West, for instance, after the Second World War, they were all bleeding, their economies were down. Recovery plans were set. The Bretton Woods institutions championed the cause. You just mentioned the debt traps. African countries started to borrow paper money in exchange of what? Our valuable resources, because they could not pay this money back. So what they ended up doing is taking the resources outside of Africa to the outside world, to Europe, to China today. And you just mentioned the BRICS, for instance. The case of India, Brazil, and the list goes on. These are countries that we hardly talked about the things that they're doing in Africa, but believe me, their trade links, the profit that they're making from Africa is way bigger than what the entire Africa is making within regional integration when it comes to trade. Look at India, for instance. Now in terms of constructions, we have them taking over the construction. India is doing it.
It's been China.
No, and this is what happened, because they always rebrand and come in different fashions. What used to happen is we used to blame the Westerns over and over. Now wherever you walk is a Chinese product. Look at how India is doing currently when it comes to construction across African countries, when it comes to transportation across African countries, because there's this huge company called Tata, and it's owned by Indians. Now it's present in many African countries. Who owns them? It's Indians. And not only that, look at the case of Brazil. You look at them in the site of Angola, and the list goes on. They dominate construction, they dominate food production, and many other initiatives as well. These are problems that African states are going through.
But Ousman, let's also agree on this. If someone steps on you twice, whose problem is it?
It's yours, and that's why
shouldn't you look at Africa then?
And that's why we are saying, you see, we have so much been put in
a lot of
blame, on the people who were responsible for some of these things. But why can't we be deliberate enough to say, enough is enough? You've done it to us once, twice. We are not going to wait for the third time. And that deliberate action must be taken by Africans with values. Africans who really believe that Africa has the solutions for her own development. But these are things that today we must have the discussion at a continental level, not just for the youths, but to point the people in charge with the right questions, to make them take efforts and to be deliberate with them for Africa to be in its rightful place.
Incredible.
You see, there is a big gap between the education system in Africa, policy formulation in Africa, and policy actions in Africa. And these are big issues that we must address. Narrowing down that gap will enable us to save a future that we want. You see, when we walk into our educational institutions, it's supposed to be a solution center where the problems of the society is diagnosed and pathways are saved from. So people who go to these educational institutions as instructors, as lecturers, as teachers, of course, they need to have a mastery of the areas that they're teaching on.
So that politics can have people who are not skilled?
No, but by investing in such, because the products of our education, our education products are the people occupying the public offices as well. So what really happened is going back to the grassroots, instill skills, values, principles, but real knowledge that can drive development in educational institutions, accompanied with sense of patriotism, and also that when they move to this public sectors, they're not just there as mere spectators, but they're there to impact, they're there to work, they're there to transform. And these agendas must be triggered from the educational institutions. Now, back on the politicians, of course, you look at requirement for presidency, National Assembly,
bare minimum.
Bare minimum. But who even says that our educational institutions should be the standard measures? Why not look into other criteria, for instance? Looking at their track records, What have they been doing? Why should they be trusted, for instance? But if anyone can produce a certificate, therefore they have such roles to play in a society, it really makes us go back. Because the people we are trusting with power, we are trusting with responsibilities, lack that incompetency. And not just the incompetency, but even the honesty to say they are incompetent. And that's where the problem is. So educational institution must restore skills, value and everything, but also needs to instill that mindset of Africanness.
The mindset of Africanness.
Believing that those individuals can champion our development in a better way.
And at some point you speak of patriotism being part of the things that they should instill in the young people. If you've been following conversations around, the governments now are shaping the message of patriotism to only preach a message that benefits that specific government in power.
Right.
So there is a lot of bastardizing of patriotism.
Right. I mean, you see, you can look at it this way. When we talk about patriotism, the best mistake we will do is to think that it's mere slogans that people have to champion. At some point, it's just using some slogans to mobilize youths at their own detriment without them being aware of.
And how do we get over that?
And to get over that is looking at it beyond the political conversations, looking at it beyond the discussions, the public speaking competitions, and the list goes on. That's not where we're going to. We want to see real patriotism in terms of our development, and that takes values. People need to know who they are. People need to know what role, what responsibility they owe the society. And by doing so, you are giving them an opportunity to serve the interests of the common people.
You're basically trying to say that beyond party politics, we should unite and have that cause for our nations.
Of course, we've seen, dictators champion the idea of patriotism just because they enjoy the big man syndrome. They want to be the only individual in charge. So by doing so, you tell people, okay, you are even living because of the sacrifice we made in the 80s. You are living because of the sacrifice we made in the 70s. But who says you should be there? If you have been serving for 40 years and you still haven't found a replacement for you, that is a total failure of your leadership.
Correct.
And African states must realize this.
The conversation that has been going literally everywhere, just as you highlighted, it's about the government, right? And one thing we see is young people are saying, government help us, save us from A, B, C, D. And what we know is a government is supposed to create that enabling environment for every single person, young people inclusive, to thrive.
Yeah, but Patrick, this is what the government has failed to do for so many years. And somehow this has really affected Africa. And it's one of the main push factors that is pushing the best of our own, which is the young generation, the youths that are equipped with the skills, the youths that have knowledge to impact their communities, to run away from Africa. Here is what the government needs to be doing. Instead of just trying to do everything on their own, government are not supposed to be the sole service providers. They need to open up the space and guide young entrepreneurs, guide the private sector to strive, but to be able to employ the young individuals graduating from universities, giving them an enabling environment to come up with the skills and ideas that they're leaving school with, to implement in their own communities. There has to be, this bridge in place. But not only that, instead of the governments now doing these functions, what we see is even to protect few group of individuals who belongs to the same government. They do the businesses, but they also give businesses to their own friends, their own colleagues. Tokenism. And not only even limiting themselves to that, they will single-handedly pick few youths, turn them and consume them in their own system, and be a tool to exploit more youths. And this is where the problem lies. And many African governments are using the same strategy. It doesn't work. The frustration involved, and you are not solving a generational problem. You're just doing this because you want to protect a political term. You're doing it because you want to protect a party interest. This has really not been working. So for governments, for African states today, there has to be a deliberate action to focus on providing that enabling environment for individuals to have a level playing ground, where you as an individual coming from a farming background can strive in the economy, can do agriculture, and also realize your own potentials and be given the opportunities involved. But aside this, we are just giving chance to very few individuals who will make profit at the expense of the masses, sometimes are not even our own people. So they do that and run away with the profit. And that's why we are facing the crisis we are facing today.
But Ousman, what's the likelihood of a child being born in a very poor background in Africa being able to rise to the top 5 in the nation?
I mean, it's a very, very difficult.
Do you consider yourself one of the people?
I mean, I am a living testimony of being from the remotest, being from the very less background, and trying to navigate within the established structure. In as much as we point fingers at them, I needed to break through. So this is not what every individual have at an individual motivation, but it's something that we go there and give them that hope that if Ousman was able to move from a roof tent or whatever from primary school to go to a university, being the first individual from my community to attain a university degree.
Crazy.
I mean, we were not seeing any of these things. Talking about social amenities today, I did only move to the city to see them in real life. There was nothing like roads connecting us. There was nothing like a hospital where we can go to. We struggle as young people from there. And today I am so happy that a lot of individuals from my own community have begun to look into the little progress that I've made and are now in universities. So in as much as we do this at a bigger scale, we go back home to motivate other young people to follow.
To step up and do something.
To step up and
Ousman, you speak about local action, and that triggers my mind to think of this narrative. Think global and act local.
Yeah, I mean, Patrick, it's nothing bad to really talk about thinking global. We live in a world where the advancement of certain societies in one way or the other have an impact in the societies in which we live in. So therefore, one has to be able to contextualize what works globally on how it can be an active solution for local problems. But saying this doesn't really mean that we have to give up whatever we have, because I mean, in as much as we want things to be done in a global standard, not undermining the very principle of quality, we also want to champion our very own cause. So thinking globally is a good thing to do. Acting globally isn't a good thing to do. But there has to be priorities as well, and that means putting your narratives first, putting your own initiative first, because that's what the world does.
Okay. And then you speak about the importation of Western culture, imbalances of trade, where we're importing a lot from the West and exporting less. Speak about these corporations, the global corporations that are literally based in the Congo, exploiting and leaving nothing behind. And
yeah, I mean, I think also sometimes we are tied with the ideologies so much that we really don't look at the practical aspect of it. You see, like a word like globalization, it sounds good in the ears, the way it is on a national debate. Yes, I mean, everybody is talking about, but what are you globalizing? Okay, so this is where African states really needs to, look at what are we doing. It's not bad to globalize, but here is the point, Patrick. In international or foreign policies, national interests are always forwarded. It's usually a priority. And that's why we have the problem in Africa. If you were to globalize, what do you globalize? Is it ideas? Is it services? Is it globalization of trade, or is it culture? Now, if you just look at it in this way, where is Africa winning? In the case of ideas, for instance, what are these ideas that emanates from Africa, championed by Africans, and it is today influencing global politics. It's none.
Have any?
So
Totally not.
what really happened is like we're just getting everything coming from
Consuming.
outside, and in some way we mix the term globalization and westernization. It's two different things. So what we kind of see, and it's happening, is more of like a globalization of Western ideas, a globalization of Western markets. So what they ended up doing is create market in Africa and pump in their own products. So what happened in Africa is you're killing your grassroots initiatives before they even grow.
I see.
And I mean, like, if you look at it, the standard, the test, you just cannot mind the two. Because this is already an established structure here, which is structured, given all the support that it needs, and given a market to go and do business around the world. To match with a grassroots initiative, with an individual who is not just struggling to put something in order, but have many societal battles that they're facing and combating. Now to match these two brands just doesn't work for local initiative. It kills local initiative, it kills innovation, it kills the creative arts. Everything within Africa dies because there is just something that we welcome in and give more space, give more taste.
Has there been anything made by Africans in Africa that has been sold to the world?
Except
music.
I mean, apart from the music, maybe it's
Nigerian music.
It's our resources and everything. We've seen how, of course, Nigerian music, Afrobeat, which I consume a lot, by the way, and I understand that today, at least, those are some of the things that we can sell. But again, it has an issue. You see, with our stars, the Davidos, the Burna Boys, the Wizkid, and all these guys, Nigeria and even beyond, they still need to go to the US to be recognized as Grammy holders. Why not have our own initiative?
Our own initiative.
Where we recognize, because we know they have the potentials. In fact, they have sold and serve as ambassadors of Africa globally.
But that's not enough. So.
It's not enough. Where is that industry in Africa that gives them the recognition they deserve before these very Grammys, Oscars, and
a lot of things that you're speaking about, Ousman, have to cut you short because you're in here. In other words, you're in the interview in a note of self-identification, self-realization, and not having to wait for the Western folks or external factors, the external forces to endorse us.
Thank you so much. But I must also, recognize the incredible work you do. And this has been a great interview, and I definitely celebrate you too.
I'm so grateful, and it's really humbling that we get to sit and have this kind of conversation, sharing our thoughts and mostly our thoughts, basically, with so many people around Africa and around the world. You know, one thing we should tell you is, if you're African and you feel you're African and you're outside, please come back. We love you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben, for being on the camera.
Thank you so much.